No. That's fine.
That's absolutely fine.
Right, we're going to start.
Oh, thank you, Richard, and hello, everybody. Yeah, we have got a slideshow presentation, so we'll talk you through, I suppose, some of the things we do, and we're trying to kind of fit it in a little bit to what we think we understand your course is about. But yeah, I'm Harriet, and this is Rob, and we take it in turns to be somewhere and nowhere. And sometimes we're in between.
Yeah, oftentimes we're in between worlds. We just don't know.
Yeah. No, the name Somewhere Nowhere actually comes from the first line of a poem by Anne Stevenson that inspired me when I was very young. And the poem's called Still Life in Utah. And the opening words are somewhere nowhere in Utah. So that's where the name comes from.
Yeah. And we just like that notion about the fact that in the world is full of nowheres until you start looking at it, till you start understanding it a bit more, till you start investigating that place, and then all of a sudden it becomes a somewhere, somewhere that's embedded in your memory or in your ken, as they would say up north.
Yeah.
How you ken a place. So that's where we're at with that kind of as a practice and as a name.
So shall I share the screen now?
Go for it. No.
What's the dog's name?
Dog's called Skunk. Sorry.
That's all right. Hello. Right, I'm going to try this. Let's see if it works. I'm going to press share. How's that?
There you go. Bingo.
Great. So this is us.
Yeah, this is us. This is us beings in place. A lot of our work is outside. An awful lot of time, in fact, is spent outside, getting to know a landscape, getting to know a place, getting to know the culture of land use. Either working alongside farmers, like here in Dartmoor on the south bit of the Dartmoor National Park, or
we're stuck.
I think we go there. Yeah, or out in the fells of Cumbria. This is going out on a gather to bring the It's difficult once you get up into the mountains to actually bring the sheep off the fells. It's an effort. It's definitely an effort. It's a tarscape. As Tim Ingold would have it, this place that's used by so many people in a very leisurely way to access the mountains, the fells, but for some people, of course, it's their office, their workspace.
And this is in Utah. So, as I said, we take our name from that poem. It's been a very long ambition of mine to go to Utah, and we had a chance to go 2 years ago to do some teaching in a college in America. So we went via Utah.
As you do.
Yeah, which we had to. And this is, another example of meeting people who have a deeper understanding of a place, so that we don't visit just as tourists. This is a place called Pando, which is the largest clonal aspen forest on the planet, roughly 12,000 years old. And because we knew we were going, we set up a meeting with the head forester who's in charge of looking after Pando and trying to understand better how it's coping with climate change and other problems. So that's just us kind of in the days when we could get on a plane.
Yeah.
For a good reason, we did.
And on a much smaller scale and more our level in a sense, I suppose, is talking to the artist David Nash, who we've gone to visit his woods in North Wales a few times now, and just hang out, chatting to him about a few things, but to have the privilege to stand in his ash dome and talk to him about art, creativity, managing a space and things like that while surrounded by these trees, which are now sadly dying through ash dieback. So it's about that understanding place, those different layers of complexities through somebody else's eyes.
Yeah, and in this context, thinking about how we look at relationship to place and other beings in space, and the way that David Nash works with trees as living the idea of wood is something to think about if you haven't already looked at his work, although I'm sure you have. So other getting ourselves involved in place, again, working alongside farmers to fix walls. We just, do as much as we can to get stuck in and to really feel what it's like to be out there. Yeah, even the joy of washing sheep. But some of the conversations you have are much better when you're doing something in a person's space that they're used to doing themselves.
But it's about not just the individuals, of course, it's about collective understanding and gathering expertise from a wide variety of fields. So we're part of a 5-year fellowship program at Lancaster University with a team called Ensemble, which are looking at climate change and modelling climate going forwards by working collaboratively cross-discipline through big groups of people from very wide sectors over a 5-year period. So that's been an interesting process, being with that team for the last 5 years, and just getting to grips with languages, different ontologies that we don't understand, but we understand they're important. So it's just been nice being involved in that kind of framework. Or hear Harriet giving a poetry reading in a place where the poem was written, a group walk in the Lake District National Park, part of a project we worked on with 7 trees. But the ability to actually read a poem in the space that was written back to an audience, I think, is quite joyful, quite magical, and it lands really well, as you might imagine.
Yeah, so it's part of our practice, or for me as a writer, is to write poetry in response to place and different people's relationships to place. So in the setting of an academic situation, when we're talking to people, I'll write poems that reflect back to them their different ontologies, but here, reading a poem that was written here to people as we walk through the landscape. And then we take our work out and about. And again, it's about bringing together a lot of different voices. So this is an exhibition down in London about the Lake District landscape and hill farming and ecological care. We've got people in the audience there from NFU, National Farmers Union, Lake District National Park, and lots of different backgrounds, really. It's good to get them together.
Yeah, and relationships plays an important role in our work. You spend time with people, you build relationships with them, and you can keep going back and forth. So this is back at the RGS, the Royal Geographical Society again, gathering a group of artists together around their annual gathering called Explore. We wanted to bring artists as researchers into that space. And it was just an interesting process to form an exhibition around artists engaged with place, really, in that august building. But usually, we much prefer meeting outside. This is with a group of farmers, from about 18 months ago, just going up to the top, ready to come off and bring all the sheep down. So that was a nice way of getting to stand on a really high part of the landscape, look all around you, and chat with farmers about what was going on below us. And there's that slide. I mean, we've brought those words in previously, but I think it's nice to just underline the importance to our work for curiosity, our own curiosity, the relationships we build up, and quite a lot of our projects are done over a period of time. We don't tend to do these very quick in and out projects, although we will do if people pay us money, basically, because that's the way being a freelance artist can be or is. But still, we like to involve a lot of time to look at a subject and try and sit with it for a while and learn from it.
And, the key is listening, I think, for us. And that is not just listening to people. It's also tuning into the landscape and what that expresses. So this is just an illustrative photograph. I'm recording skylarks and curlews there on a particularly stunning day in Yorkshire. And sitting around the table, again, talking to people who are making big decisions about landscape use and going through their own paperwork nightmares.
Nightmares, yes.
Or here, this is somebody from Natural England. She uses a lot of Latin terms, so I have to record them so I can listen back and then try and make some sense later on. But my little recording device is one of my best friends, I have to say. So again, it's listening. And this moment of meeting this tree was one of the most incredible moments of my life. This is in the South Downs. It's a lime tree, probably 2,000 years old, and was only able to get that age because it was coppiced for many hundreds of years, probably.
Yeah, so the tree that Harriet and Nick Heasman, who's policy officer with the South Downs, looking at here, is actually bigger than that thing you're looking at. It extends right the way back. So it's 7-8 meters across, this singular tree. And it looks like that when you look it up in May. And just thinking about audio, just Harriet recorded a brief conversation with him, which sounds like this. Hope I play this button.
We're in the South Downs National Park, and we're standing in a coppice stall of a lime, a hybrid lime, and general consensus is that this was the tree that was the climatic species. So this would have been the #1 tree in the canopy when the Romans were here about 2,000 years ago. To see it here, it's like it is a relic, but it's living. And so that's the great thing. It's very much natural heritage, but it has a cultural heritage link, taking us back to when our ancestors 2,000 years ago, how this landscape would have looked.
Magic, as Harriet said, that's one of the most wonderful moments we've had in a good amount of time. And I think the point worth illustrating here is getting in touch with people you want to speak to. Never be afraid to ask. Follow that curiosity. Just keep asking, keep probing at the edges. We were showing an exhibition down at Brighton, and we thought we were going to go down there for a week. And we may as well try and speak to a few people who were down there. So we got in touch with Nick Heasman, and he took us on a tour of trees around the South Down National Park for a full day. And it was just the most wonderful experience to step into this canopy with a tree that hardly anybody sees. So do ask people. Harriet's a writer, she's a poet. She's already said, I'm a photographer. That's kind of where my skill set lies, I suppose. I've been doing it for 40 years. So quite a few of the people we meet and continue now to meet, I shoot on my old-fashioned large format camera to make these kind of images, which I still love. I still like making them. Slow images. They're images of people in place that they feel comfortable with. And I think it says a lot about themselves and also the landscape, the space that they inhabit. And then what we tend to do through exhibitions and books is to add to those images by bringing in their words back to present them in book format or to put into exhibition spaces. And I think it's that super additivity between the images and the words. So when you put them together, I think it makes a very powerful statement in a space. So, that's the way that we tend to work with a lot of the projects we're looking at the moment.
Yeah, and what David said here is touching on themes of collaboration and being able to look after landscapes and who has a voice and who hasn't got a voice is something that continues to interest us.
So speaking about how we present our work, we do exhibitions on the back of our longer term projects. This is something called the Long View. 2 years with 7 remarkably ordinary trees, and we wanted to bring the individual trees into the space. So I've been a bonsai tree guy for many decades now, and I've 7 examples of the trees that we were working with. So we brought them into the space in these specialist pots with poetry inscribed on the outside. So they were like the main feature of the exhibition space. And also, it's also about getting it out into other avenues as well. So an article in the Telegraph about our work in the fells was quite a nice thing to have, even though we didn't really want that to go up as a title. That was their editorial decision, because we think that conflict or presenting conflict so openly just leads to more schisms and more breakdown relationships. But hey, it's the newspaper and they have to sell them.
That's what sells newspapers.
Yeah.
But it does come back for us consistently to just getting our feet on the ground and being outside. And that's something we do as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, camping. We do spend a lot of time camping out in the fells in all seasons and all weathers, because we think if you're out there, you're really attached to that place and you go through those threshold moments. And it can be bloody cold and quite uncomfortable. If you've got half decent gear, which helps, and you've checked out the weather, and checking out the weather for us doesn't necessarily mean you go out when it's really nice. Sometimes we go out when it's quite horrible and quite harsh, just purely to be in a space like that, to get to experience what the land is going through. We like to think of the land as a silent partner in a lot of the work that's going on out there. So we like to consider the land and bring its voice into what we do. Long walks as well. We just did a 13-day walk last year. We just come off the back of a 2-day walk over the weekend, but this was at the start of a 7-day walk. And our dog there, Gilly, at the end of sort of coming up to 20 miles, he was concerned we were still going on and we hadn't reached the tent site yet, but still he just keeps going on. But by sort of getting out there, you have the ability to put yourself in positions like this, you know, wonderful camp spots which look good for Instagram and all the associated bits of social media. But it's the doing, the challenge of actually getting out into a space like that. You know, it's not just the walking, it's also the logistics of planning what you need to take and what you're thinking of gathering when you get out there. But then you do get these moments of pure joy of just being in a space on your own to witness landscapes like this.
This is a slightly different camping spot. Back to America again. Instead of putting our tent up on our camping trip, we slept inside one of Nancy Holt's sun tunnels. If you haven't come across this in your research yet, do have a look. It's the most phenomenal piece of artwork out in the salt deserts of Utah. And the holes, there's 4 tunnels aligned to where the sun rises in midsummer and midwinter, and the holes inside the tunnels are reflective of the constant light show, and absolutely perfectly suited to its place.
Harriet, sorry, we just lost a little bit of that, and when you were talking about the little holes, can you just...
The little holes are representative of constellations, and they shine their light through during the day. And then when you overnight sleeping, or not sleeping because it was too exciting, it's like being inside an aperture watching the universe turn. Just amazing.
Yeah, so Nancy Holt bought 40 acres of desert, of scrubland, of nothing, if you like, on the edge of Utah, going back in the late 70s, I think it was, and then placed these tunnels over a period of years into the landscape. It's a bit of a drive to get there, but you can find directions how to get there, and you can actually just do what we did, just turn up and camp in them, if you like. But certainly worth it as an experience. You know, she's got an exhibition, I think, in a gallery in Ireland at the moment, and she's now being rightly accredited as being one of the pioneers of land art movement, along with her partner Robert Smithson, who did the spiral jetties. But she's just an inspiration. We put these 2 slides up. So this is the first main project we did, which was predominantly looking at the upland farmers and other kind of managers of the uplands. And we did the second project was on trees, and people quite often ask us, how can you do a project on hill farmers and then do a project on trees? Isn't there a conflict? And we don't think there is. You know, we're just happy to look at space from different value systems, different viewpoints, and just consider them in the round. You know, we love trees, but we also like the idea that people still have an attachment to the landscape, even though it needs to be altered, we think, you know, so that's what we're looking at the moment.
Yeah, so every project we do try and listen to a number of different perspectives, which brought us on to a recent project we did. The kind of the end parts of this project, which we called Sense of Here, were altered because of COVID. But during 2019, we spent time walking in 12 different sections of the Lake District National Park and interviewing people and considering these multiple issues that all really interesting for us. And we combined that research element with our active art practice. So in each section, we were also taking a canvas and installing it with a different word on it each time. And the first placement in January was this one, up in the north, TikTok. And then when we came all the way around the clock face in December, we placed this canvas.
And that was our favourite one, I think. And as a statement, I think it resonates with us, this idea that each is both at an individual and a societal level. So this was above Buttermere Lake on a really nice day. We managed to put the canvas up in light winds. And it just felt like a really dramatic place to place some words in the landscape.
And it took quite a lot of time to distill or to think about the words that would go on the canvas. And then the act of placing it over the year was almost to create a felt poem, so that we put some words, but in between those words, in the space in between, was the landscape. And then at the end of the project, we did a walk all the way round, which took us 13 days. And in the process of doing that walk, I was able to build another poem that incorporated all of these phrases. So I'm just going to read that to you. A sense of here. Rocks become earth. Clouds replace sun. Flowers replace snow. Day follows night. Tick tock. Step by step, our days become encounters with sky, land, water, and the thread of stories. We listen, weaving between deep time, weather time, this place crafted by human desires. Yet if all we see is shaped by hands, where is the wild? It comes up where it can. See, it is here, in this moment of air and breath, the easing of moss over stone, the speed of merlins. It can be tempting to seek direction in memory and hope, but these make half-truths of place, skirt around the present as our paths pass through light and shade, trailing loss and gain, and bring us face to face again and again with a thought that laps like the insistent return of the sea. The whole of life is in our hands. Hush, here among trees, clouds, stones, witness to water. Feel it in your heart, how each act matters, however small. There is a world to be found in a moment's expanse. Pause. Each act begins as an idea that can only grow when fed with love and daring. Imagine what can change. So winding back the clock, we put this image in because it kind of marks the start of the act of taking poetry out into the landscape. Which means they have a kind of a chastity belt put on the end of them, the youths. They don't want them to get pregnant until they're 3 years old, and they go up onto the fells for 3 months every year. So he stitches cloths onto the back end of about 350 ewes every year. And I asked him if he would mind if I attached a poem to this. So with much laughter, he said, yeah, go on then. And they gave me 21 clouts to work with. And so I put words on them, off they went. And what happened was the poem became altered in the process of living out in the landscape. And it was really never in that order, except when I wrote it down on the page.
Yeah, we went out a couple of times over that winter period because the sheep were out for about 2 months, 3 months. And we went out to try and see if we could see any of the poem cloths on the big expanse above Coniston at all, and we couldn't. And the farmer wasn't surprised. He said they were just to disperse themselves into the landscape. But we went back in March the following year when he brought all the sheep in off the fell, not just the sheep with the clouts, but the ewes as well. And it was just a great process over a 2-day period to bring the sheep in. And then one by one, we started spotting the sheep with the clouts on the back end. We've still got them now. I think Richard's actually smelt the artifact. We brought them around to Dartington one time, and they're still in their hermetically sealed bag. They still reek of sheep, which is ace. They're probably the only clouts that have been kept, because they tend to get ditched after 3 months being on a sheep's back end, but they're nice.
But that was part of our practice, but I also wove it into an MPhil that I was doing in Glasgow University, and that helped me to develop this kind of act of putting stuff out there in the land. And then we followed on through the Longview with a number of installations. This one is called Everything is Connected, also known as the Yellow Line, on Wasdale Screes, and that caused a bit of contention, which we can talk about afterwards, because some people loved it and a lot of people hated it. Some people didn't. But that's what art's there for, isn't it? So so we did 7 installations as part of the Longview, and this was one above Ullswater, the final wrap of 7 stages of a haiku through a woodland. And at a tree we've called the Langstrath birch. This is using cloth sewn with the word Samara. And we can quiz you on what anybody knows what that means afterwards. Richard might recognise this, another one of our installations using books, which were carefully chosen for what the books are about, and then covered up, retitled, and using the earth itself and that kind of knowledge as a compost, but allowing them to float. So we have a sense of detachment from not being detached from the past, using knowledge that's useful, but being free to moving forwards with a lightness.
And this was at the culmination of a year-long project working with Lancaster University again in the Conwy Valley, looking at the river and looking at modelling in real time, so trying to find out about pollution events that's going into the river, so that fishermen further downstream know when not to take their mussels out of the mussel beds and so on and so forth. But we always take it back to the land, and we always try and talk to the people that we meet on that landscape. So this is Gareth Jones. He was a farmer who was putting these recorders on the back of his sheep so that Lancaster University could work out where they were going in the landscape in real time, which was really interesting. And Harriet then wrote a short poem on the back of
I didn't call it a poem. I wrote some words, and then it wasn't really until how do I get back? Until Gareth spoke it, that it became a poem. And we're just going to play you reading this. We translated it together into Welsh. Can you get that button, Rob?
Yeah. It's quite quiet, so we can get this.
That's done. It.
Lle mae'r afon yn llifo? Lle mae'r ddafad yn mynd? Beth allwn ei wybod? A allwch flasur prif? A allwch deimlo'r niw? Mae pob dim yn gysylltiedig. Un a hwn a hon.
There we go. So, we've also begun using our art as more of a kind of a protest activism, really.
Yes. Yeah. It's got to the point, I think, in our career now where we realise that we do stand for something. We do have opinions on certain things. You know, we can't sit on the fence any longer, and we need to start getting involved with through our work, if you like, in a non-violent way, to try and affect some form of change. So we're building kind of partnerships with whoever we feel we can align with to try and do something useful in our own way. So this is a woodland that's due to be removed due to HS2 down on the Northamptonshire and Warwickshire border. It's a beautiful woodland. It's a nature reserve, and HS2 is due to come through this. There's 108 woodlands due to be affected by HS2 over the course of its lifetime. So we use the yellow cloth that we put down the screes at Wasdale that you saw a few images ago. We cut that up and then repurposed it to put these bands around 108 trees across this woodland, and then curated a couple of walks through the space over the course of a gorgeous weekend, just talking about the trees and the birds and all other
sharing
things.
Poems that I'd written in place on it, because we've made a number of visits there. Very emotional day, and unfortunately these woods are being very badly affected. Yeah,
they're fenced off now, and I think they're just waiting for the final notice for them to come down, and then the diggers and chainsaws and bulldozers remove in and just take it all away, which is incredibly sad, actually.
And we've begun taking our canvases to different places, so they appeared in the woodland as well. We can put whatever letters on it we want, so there's, as long as the word's not too long, there's but is temporary. We've done a few permanent sculptures, and this looks quite different now. This was put in 2017 as one of 3 tree folds in Cumbria, and it now has a very big oak tree in it.
That was very satisfying. We spent 5 days at each of the 3 tree folds, one here on the shores of Ullswater, one in Grisdale Forest as part of their sculpture trail collection now, I suppose, and one on Little Asley Common to the far east, using local stone. And we worked with a stonemason who's worked with Andy Goldsworthy for a few decades now, so he was pretty good. So we spent 5 days with this guy, really knowledgeable guy, and had a great time. And this was the final one. We had a wet week in November. It pissed it down for the whole week, actually, so we got soaking wet. And these stones, interestingly, were washed out into a local farmer's field as a result of Storm Desmond, which decimated lots of Cumbria back in 2015. So, the story of the place just keeps getting revealed back into the pieces that we're making, which we really like. And you can't really see it here, but there was poetry carved in certain rocks and then placed within the wall of each of the three. So there's individual poems in each of the three, but there's a long piece that threads its way through the landscape now, which we quite like.
Yeah, poem in 3 parts, and each treefold has a tree inside it. And the oak tree that was placed in here is taken from just down the way. So it's the genetic progeny of this landscape, which is great. So yeah, just kind of thinking about we're not really going into our methodology, but we were really happy to answer questions about that kind of stuff. But talking to students in the past about finding things out, it's not just about asking questions, it's thinking about it in different ways and really spending time to get into other people's worlds. And then that's where the art comes in then, of how do you present different voices and different viewpoints. And that's a constant question, and I think it's part of what we do, is we keep questioning and keep refining and keep changing, I suppose.
Yeah, there's a good word that I keep using, which is called Bayesian theorem, which basically means you change your practice or your way of being as new truthful information comes in. So it's not about being stuck in a way, it's about I suppose responding to change, responding to new information, and that's the way we're at the moment, of course, with climate change. So as new stuff starts coming in, we're constantly soaking that up as much as we can. It's a minefield, and it's just really dense and thick and fast, but we try and read as widely as we can so we feel as informed as possible, so at least we're tooled up with knowledge when we have conversations with other people. Yeah, and the conversations can often be richer than what you read as well. Yeah, I think it's really important to be out there talking to people. So this is a shot. We know you guys are on residency now, and you'll probably, this will mean something to you. We ran a residency, and in actual fact, there was barely any artwork produced during the residency because it was simply about soaking up different opinions and people sharing their different perspectives on place, in place. And then the artwork that followed was the result of that. So it's almost like when you do a residency, you need another residency afterwards to do the next bit. But yeah, again, it's about building up different voices and different perspectives. So we've recently set up the Place Collective at the Centre for National Parks and Protected Areas, which is here in the University of Cumbria, to bring together different media to reflect their responses, and are all really curious and interested about research with people who have different specialist knowledge. So that's in its infancy, but we've got some exciting plans going on. Have we frozen? Are we still there?
Well, actually, you did freeze just as you were explaining who was in the collective. So can you tell us again?
Go on, Rob.
Yeah, we set this up because we realised that we're only 2 people, and there's lots of other 1s and 2s and 3 peoples out there across the UK and indeed across the world who are really critically engaged as artists, as creatives, in place, in environment, in rural cultures. That's what we're particularly interested in. So we set it up, and we've started to invite people to join the collective and start having to have conversations. But we want to take it more beyond the conversation as well. We want to actually do. So we're in the process of putting in a bid at the moment with some other exciting partners, looking at peat landscapes here in the north to try and bring a few artists together to work in their own ways. So it's about talking, but not navel gazing, and doing, and trying to share what we do together and how that can be extended. So that's what the Place Collective is starting to do. Yeah, I think
the question at the minute that we're all facing is how do you shift the dynamics of conversations and relationships in a way that we can, between us, make some meaningful action, because we're in a time of crisis. So this is one little way that we're trying to move our own practice on with other people.
But for us, it always comes back to place, to landscape, to getting out there. We're talking just before we came on air with Richard about feast or famine as a freelance. Sometimes you can go through periods where you need to drill another hole in your belt and eat lentils. And then other times when it seems to be that things are flying. You know, your ideas are flying and the partnerships are developing, what have you. And we're in that phase at the moment. We've got some really exciting and cool projects which are underway or just about to start. But we've become managers.
Yeah,
Gosh.
Yeah, which is, you know, it's all right, but it's certainly, I think for both of us, it's absolutely fundamental to actually being well, to get our feet on the ground and get out there and walk. And we're very fortunate to be able to do that and to live somewhere where we've got this on our doorstep. So this was Friday. That idea of, oh, well, we could go the long way around or we could take the shortcut. It was quite challenging going up that hill. But, you know, that is something you don't get in a room or on a screen. And we both feel really, really replenished by being outside, don't we? Yeah,
we certainly do. And we came across this on our journey across America a couple of years back. And I think it's, you know, it's just painted on the side of this gas tank in the middle of the desert. You know, it is a piece of land art as far as I'm concerned. And I think that's point, you know, very cynical point perhaps, but I think it's true. Everything has a price, even the free things, or the ostensibly free things have a price. So that I think that's always worth holding in your mind. Who you're going to work with, what kind of voice you're going to represent, and how you're going to represent that as an artist, I think is crucial. You know, what role does art play in moving us all forward? I think is a really one of the crucial questions you guys should be asking of yourselves and of each other as well, I think. And that's us. Ta-da!
Thank you very much for listening.
I'm going to come up, stop sharing now.
I'm just going to suggest that any, as well as the guys in the room here, anybody who's with us on the Zoom call, just feel free, if you want to ask a question, to unmute yourself. We'll try to, because we're a really small group, we'll try to do this like a conversation instead of, you know, the sort of formal Zoom thing. So I'm just going to look behind me in the room and see if anybody wants to kick off with a comment or a question or anything.
I'm interested in how long you left your 12 canvases in the landscape for.
Not very long. Yeah, at the longest, a few hours. So the plan for 2020, which couldn't happen because of lockdown, was to bring them into rural spaces and leave them for longer, like you know, for a whole day. At the moment, we don't want to leave them overnight. So they're very temporary, very fleeting. And there's that thing about the experience of doing it and then how it becomes an image. That's its longer life, I suppose.
I think what you, as an artist who are doing things like we're trying to do, you know, you can do your test pieces, which are great, but the real testing actually comes when you get out into the landscape. So those canvases seem like a good idea. They're using a photography stand, so that they used to put the rolls on, because I've had it for years, and it just seemed like a good thing to go out. When you put a thing like that in the landscape, it acts like a giant sail. So unless you tie it down, which we did, we tethered it and used these massive pegs to keep it in space. You know, the tension on the poles was quite incredible. And the Skyland water, the one on the shores of Old, looks quite serene, but it's probably blowing about 20 miles an hour, gusting. And that took some of the letters off the cloth and blew them into the lake.
Yeah, the water was actually in the water. And that was quite a challenge.
Yeah.
So logistically, it was actually really difficult to put it up. So that whole physicality of doing the artwork, making it a physical piece, and then when people came past and they interacted with it, there's that unpredictability, which we both really enjoy. When you do something outside, you can never guarantee it's going to be smooth, and it kind of embeds it as an experience, and I think it triggers a bit more thought about what it is that we're doing.
So how important then is the actual photograph? And what does that say about how that thing sits in the landscape?
How important was the photograph, did you say, Richard?
Yeah.
Very much so for me as a photographer. I think to document it through film and through video, I think is crucial. You know, that becomes, to our minds at least, part of the art piece. You know, the thing itself in the landscape is a piece of temporary art that sits there, and some people see but not many people see. You know, we had some interventions from the general public, but you know, to take the pictures was crucial for me to see it as it shaped in the landscape. And I think the real beauty came at the end when we'd done the set, when we got all 12 together. It was only then we could step back and see the value of doing something like that. You know, sometimes when you're stuck in your little world and very up close to the minutiae of all the bits and pieces, you kind of lose sight of the bigger thing. But when you finished doing the 12 canvases and you've got that set together, and the poem that Harriet wrote on the back of it, having had all the knowledge of the space and the time that we've gone through as well, I think that's where the real the relief, but also the joy, you know, that's when it feels like it's complete.
Yeah, no, I don't know if you go into this, Richard, in the course, because that's one of those questions that doesn't necessarily have a right answer, isn't it? Whether the photograph of an artwork is also an artwork, but it's all kind of a part of the continuum, I think, that's part of the process. And when you place words like that in an unexpected setting, the way people experience them is very different from how they'd experience it on a photograph. And so there's lots of ways.
I would say there's not much argument about that. They're both artworks that are different.
Yeah. What I would say is you almost can't get enough material, you know, because you don't get another chance to go and do that kind of thing again. There's a few things I kick myself, you know, during the Centre for Here project for missing, you know, not for what we did. I never kick myself for what we did per se, but it's always what I missed or the opportunity we didn't gather some sort of material then and there. So it's definitely worth trying to get as much as you can from that experience. If it's only there for 2 or 3 hours, it looks quite serene and calm, and in some sense it can be. Harriet used to take herself away to make notes, you know, maybe with a back to the canvas, just about what was going on in the space at the time. Whereas I had to almost focus on the canvas itself and what was going on around it. You know, it became a very intense period for me to actually gather the material.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
I'm on the same course, but I'm in near Fort William in
Know it well.
by Ben Nevis. And I had a walk with a ranger yesterday, and we were talking about stones that had been moved by ice, and stones that have been moved by humans, and stones that are taken up to the top of Ben Nevis as memorials to people, and they're painted. And so we were having a bit of a debate about why can't the thing about humans moving stones and nature moving stones and placing stones that aren't originally geologically from that area but have come from somewhere else. Why can nature do that and humans can't do that? And so I was just thinking about your project where you gathered the stones and you put them around the trees. I didn't quite hear it. And then you scratched into the stones, but that was in the name of art, I guess. But then we were talking about defacing stones. So yes, just that whole debate around permission.
Yeah, that's that taps in, I think, to that idea of respect for environmental or natural features, and even respecting a stone as something that has agency. So I think that's is that the kind of question is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, because we were also talking about graffiti and tagging on Ben Nevis.
Yeah.
And why is it not okay for people to leave a mark?
It's a difficult one.
Sorry?
I see Ben Nevis, Snowdon, and Scarfell Pike to a degree as sacrificial lambs, sadly.
That is, yeah.
Because they're almost like, because everybody wants to go up Snowdon or up Ben Nevis or up Scarfell Pike because it's the highest in each of those countries. So in a sense, sad as it is, that if a lot of the traffic is directed to those and it takes the pressure off nearby mountains, personally, this is my personal viewpoint, then sad but true, that's the way it happens, because people always want to get to the highest point. You know, the Three Peaks races is a point in case about going as quickly as you can between those three mountains, and they take a lot of pressure off nearby mountains. That's not to excuse it, but also, you know, thinking about elitist views, if people have a good experience going at Ben Nevis, and it can last with them for a long time afterwards, you know, it can embed, especially with the younger people, that sense of going out and being in the landscape. So as for the stones, I just don't, I'm not quite sure.
Well, I think what you're saying makes me think of what Aldo Leopold said about the problem with humans' attitude to the natural world, to treat it as a commodity rather than a community. And this idea that it's all there for the taking and the moving and the doing. And I suppose you could say with, so that the stone sculptures that we made, the stones that we used in that treefold that we showed you were washed off the fell by Storm Desmond. And because they were in a farmer's field, they were cleared off. Hello. All cleared off the field so the field could be used again. So we were kind of repurposing stones.
Yeah.
But it's a long debate, isn't it, about how humans move the landscape around and what they do with
intention.
Yeah, intention.
I mean, even, you know, Nancy Holt, amazing as that artwork is, there are some people that would criticize it because of the materials that were used and the process that's gone into it. And I think as artists, that's another question we have to keep asking ourselves, is how we use resources and what the impact is.
I just wondered, I'm interested in how have people engaged with that, with the canvases? Did you capture the feedback?
Yeah, loosely. Yes, we did. I'd say quite a few, probably about half the canvases. Do you think we met people?
Yeah. And the ones that we've used in more public events. I think it's weird. Some people almost don't comment on it, and some people do comment on it, and then they will put it in their own framework of their own frame of reference. So the canvas that said "Feel it in your heart," somebody who came to see it was French, and she said, well, if I had written that, it would say "Feel it with your heart." So, you know, people respond to it by putting it within their own idea of what their relationship to place is. And I think it's always that question about how we relate to place. Because everybody has an individual reaction, don't they?
But they're reacting to your artwork, though.
Yeah, a lot of people would actually come up and talk to us, but they wouldn't talk to us about the piece of artwork. If they saw us, they do that very British thing of coming up and chatting to you about the weather, about what sandwiches you're having for lunch. And all the while, you've got this big canvas right behind you, which they wouldn't engage with. You know, it's just an interesting way. You've got this massive canvas which says, what was it, the whole of life. I remember having a conversation with people about the weather and their walk they'd done up the mountain. And the 10 minutes we were talking, there was not one reference, and we didn't bring it up, about the canvas. They didn't talk about it, which you think is really quite interesting in a way. British.
Yeah. Are you intending to provoke something, obviously? But
yeah, I think what we intended to do, it's more for ourselves, I think, the canvases. It was something that we wanted to do for ourselves as part of the project, because we were doing a lot of this cerebral work where we were bringing in the thoughts on these 12 different subjects, if you like, that we'd gone around the wheel with. So we wanted to consider those different aspects that are all connected, but we also wanted to bring in an art piece, an art form that would also spin around the Lake District National Park.
But no, they are provocations.
They are definitely provocations.
No, definitely. And the way it chose the small number of words that went on it each time was intentional to provoke a reaction of some sort with other people, while also using it for our own process.
Yeah.
So,
but I think the provocation largely comes in the after, like we're doing now. We're talking about it now, for instance. So it's largely in that process. You know, we've given quite a few talks now over the last 18 months where we've introduced them, but also we've got them now as as kind of these little drop-in bits, so they can just be dropped in as provocations and other conversations. As an artist, it's quite useful to drop in a canvas that says, where is the wild? If you're going to be talking about rewilding, for instance. So it becomes another prop.
We use that one on social media quite a lot to see how people responded to it. And in provoking a response, we weren't expecting any particular answer. What's interesting is seeing the range of reactions that come in. And that one was quite provocative, wasn't it? Because people have this, as you know, there's a lot of different views on wild, wilding, wilderness, the wild self, the wild world, the separation between us and nature, or the non-separation. So that was really useful as a provocation.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to chip in with that? Grace?
Oh yeah, just flowing on from that really, I was just wondering, I'm really inspired by the immersive nature of your work, and I wondered, because you're obviously working together, whether you have periods of silence where you're like listening almost to the voice of the rock or the plants and the trees, which happens, obviously that's speechless communication. And if you're working together, you know, do you agree to have periods where you're doing that without words, and then you communicate your ideas separately? And when you're working with other people, you know, do you invite them to have that time? And I just wondered if you have a way of facilitating that.
Rob, like he said, he gets quite intensely involved in taking pictures. But for me, a really important part of my practice is to meditate with things, or to sit quietly, whatever word you want to use. And sometimes I have to tell you to go away, don't I? Because
you do.
I just need to just know that I'm there. And it's the same. Sometimes you need me out of the way to take pictures. And we are silent together an awful lot of the time. We can walk together for a long time and not talk. And when we're with a particular subject, whether that's a rock or a tree or something that's taken our interest, we can agree to have silent time. And we do walk quite slowly. We don't do great distances because we have lots of silent time. And when we work with groups of any age, we do really like to bring in time for absolute silence and try and kind of facilitate that quieting of however it works for people. But we build that in because I think it's so important. We're all in a habit of talking always, or trying to label stuff always. So to try and shut that down and listen in a different way, or listen with the body, is really important.
Yeah, I think it's two different experiences for us to actually go out as creatives together, or to go out as a group with other people. If you go out with other people, then you've got to expect chit-chat and banter and things like that, usually, unless you're doing a facilitated group. And that's a different experience entirely, because it's very talking amongst a group of people. And it's like the landscape is passing by as this backdrop, which we tend not to do when we're trying to do work, in inverted commas. You know, when we tend to do what we like to do, it's a lot of slow walking, sometimes, you know, maybe 100 meters or more apart from each other, just taking it in ourselves. You know, that's the way that we gather the material individually, but then we bring it together.
But we don't do facilitated walks as you might understand a mindful walk, where you set out and the whole group is curated for half an hour or so. We like to dip in and out of the kind of light chat, banter, people relating to one another, and then an exercise of stillness. And I think that's how we like to do it, this kind of oscillating, so it doesn't get too heavy or too. There's a little fine line sometimes between, especially if you're within a group, not everybody is on the same wavelength. So it's trying to offer something to different people in different ways.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go for it.
I picked up on something you said about the weather conditions being so bad, and some of the letters fell into the lake. And first of all, I wondered which letters there were and how it changed the sign. And secondly, what did you do with that? Did did you use that as a poem or something? Because it just strikes me as a really wonderful thing.
I can't remember which letters.
It was water. So it was sky, land, water. And I did make notes on the day about how the poem disintegrated itself and then it built back up. The black letters are stuck on with double-sided Velcro. And that does not like being wet. So when something blows over and falls in a lake, you're going to lose it. Our reaction was, we'd had to wait. It was February. We'd had to wait 23 days before there was still enough day to put the canvas up. And we knew the forecast was bad for the next few days. So if we didn't do it that day, we weren't going to get it done.
Yeah.
So we ended up going into the lake, getting the letters, getting my backup kit, laying the canvas out, putting them back on again, and then trying again. And it did work the second time.
We took it in turns to stand behind the canvas because it was blowing so hard to try and take some of the really weight of the wind in the canvas. So you couldn't really tell it from the pictures. Either I was stood behind it pressing or Harriet was stood behind it pressing it just to take some of the pressure off. For about maximum 15 minutes, that's all we could dared leave the canvas up.
But it was a gift because that particular canvas was thinking about drilling, if you like, the planet down to sky, land, water as three quite fundamental things that support all life. And when one is lost, you've kind of broken the thread. So there was a lot of thinking about, we like to think about things being interconnected and what happens when you sever those connections. So it kind of plays into that thinking. So that's a good question because I haven't really thought about that, but I've got all the notes somewhere.
I'd really like to see that though. I'd love to hear that, what came from that.
Yeah.
moment.
I'm going to have a look back. Thanks.
They're all good memories. Every time we took the canvas out, it was an experience. It's quite heavy carrying the kit out. I've got this big adapted rucksack so I can carry all the support poles and the canvas and all my camera gear as well. So it feels like a real effort to get it into the space. We chose a particular place looking at the map because we can read maps quite well, and finding a little space that's flat enough that we think the weather won't be affecting too much on that particular day. So it's, as a land artist here in Cumbria, you're constantly at play with the light and the weather and the conditions.
Yeah, I know it quite well. My son lived in Furness for a while, and it's
it can be.
It can be, yeah.
But the thing that we didn't get done last year was to complete the book. And the book, it may be completely reimagined, but what happened is in each chapter I have written using the notes that I made on each day when I put the canvas up. And then when we camped, with each month we camped on the absolute precise compass point, 30 degrees going around the circle. So again, we had to be very precise about where we would go, and then linked that in with the issue that we were discussing. So those notes are all there, and it's interesting to me that that's something that you're curious about, because you never quite know what people might be interested in how an artwork behaves.
I think it comes back to that idea about gathering material in the now. I can't stress highly enough the importance of gathering notes, of course, images and video. You can't go back and get those. But Harriet's notes are generally always written in first the now, aren't they?
The present tense.
The present tense, because it's very, your mind plays tricks. You come away and you reimagine it. Whereas stuff that's written when you're there at that time with the weather in your face fully, or sometimes you can't use your phone to make your notes because your hands are so cold. That's where the gems are. They're in there somewhere.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think our time is up. So I just want to say a huge thank you to you guys for finding time in your mad schedule. And now that you're managers, I just say welcome to my world. It's been great to have you. And if we can, or if everybody wants to just say a thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for listening, and thank you for the questions.
Yeah, and Richard, you've got our details, so if anybody from the course wants to ask us any particular questions, then feel free to email us or what have you. We're quite happy to help in any way we can.
That's great. Thank you. I will pass that on.
You're very welcome.
Okay. Thanks
All right,
again.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck
Have a
with
good day.
everything.
Thanks.
Bye,
Bye now.
everyone.